Hey, it's Heidi Dawson, and this is Wednesday Wisdom, where I interview wildly successful people from across the world, where we get an inside view into what their daily life looks like. Success leaves clues, and on Wednesdays, we're finding them. Join me now for the latest wildly successful interview. Hi, guys. Welcome to episode 114 of the Wildly Successful Lifestyle Podcast. So my guest this week she's just so calming and interesting and passionate. Dr. Dyan Haspel Johnson is not only super intelligent, she's just simply lovely as well. And if sleep is elusive for you or anxiety is a problem, you're going to want to listen to this episode because sleep has actually become her particular area of expertise. She has a PhD in psychology and spent 8 years as vice president of the continuing education for the Southern California Society for Clinical Hypnosis. She's also become the president of that organization. Now, she co-taught a year-long clinical hypnosis seminar at the UCLA's Department of Psychiatry, and I could spend the entire hour on her accomplishments, but you came to hear the good stuff, and that's how is this going to help you, right? So if you're struggling with sleep anxiety and many other problems, then listen in because you just may learn how to fix them on your own through some of the things that she's created. Remember, if you love something about this episode, share it and tag me and Dr. Dyan with your comments. You can also copy and text it to a friend. You never know whose life you're going to change. And don't forget to subscribe. Now let's get this show on the road with Dr. Dyan. Hi, Dr. Dyan. It is so nice to meet you.
It's wonderful to be here with you, Heidi.
I feel like we've been chatting over email for a while, so it's so nice to see your beautiful face. And we're both in kind of a similar situation. You're in Texas, and I'm in Tennessee, and we have snow.
It's so banana pants.
Yeah, it is extremely banana pants. We are I just sit here and I'm staring out the window at this beautiful, today we have sunshine. And I mean, the snow is glistening. I've never seen anything like it. I feel like I'm in Montana somewhere.
Well, it's amazing and it's so beautiful, and it's kind of a shock to my system because I just moved to Austin 2.5 weeks ago from sunny Southern California. And I was like, what?
That's a huge shock because what is it in California right now? Like 72 or something?
Oh, I'm sure. It's always. That's all right. I'm a Chicago girl originally, so I can have
So am I. I'm from my family. My mom and dad both grew up in Chicago. So, yeah, but they moved here when I was 2, so I'm a true Southern girl. But yeah. How did you get from Chicago to California?
I moved from Chicago to California when I was pretty young, and then I actually commuted during my childhood because my mom was in California and my dad was in Chicago. So I actually commuted every month.
Oh my gosh. So you truly have both. I mean,
Yeah.
Wow.
The great advantage to that actually is that this whole situation of 2020 and into 2021 and having these kinds of shifts of socially and being away from people and all that, I kind of got used to that at a young age. And so I have found ways throughout my life to stay really connected to people despite distance, which has made it, I think it's making the transition for me to do exclusively telehealth, which I've been doing, since March of 2020. But it allowed me to be able to move to Austin and continue with my clients because I'm so used to doing that. I've done that my whole life, and I'm so close to my family and friends and whatever else. And
so it's so comfortable for you. So let's talk about. I wanted for the listeners. Let's tell them, like, if somebody came up to you and said, "Hey, what do you do? Who are you?" Tell everyone exactly what you do because it's just so interesting.
That's such a great question. I feel like that's such a deep question and it sounds so simple. I guess when I was about 10 years old, this is the kind of child I was, my mother and I were talking and she asked me what I wanted to do. And I said, when I grow up, I want to help people make the unconscious conscious.
Wow. At 10.
Something like 10. That was what
I
I
don't
thought.
even think I knew the word unconscious at 10.
Well, to be fair, my mother's a psychologist, so I
Okay.
did know something about the unconscious, but I don't know what made me say that. But I think that is, I mean, I think that's what I do because I'm a psychologist and hypnotherapist and trauma specialist and a somatic experiencing practitioner. And so much of what I do is helping people to do exactly that, to take the things that are under the surface and gain insight and feel empowered by those things. And ultimately, whether it's, unconscious, like what's in a dream, or the motivation of symptoms, for example, when people, I think it's really interesting why people, when they are insomniacs or have disturbed sleep, that's interesting because they're also really tired. So how interesting is it to be really tired but not be able to rest? So those are the kinds of things that I tend to think about, and sort of like, what's the sole purpose of either a symptom or a person or a goal, and how can I help facilitate them getting from that sole purpose to manifest in the world in a way that's that feels really integrated and feels cohesive.
Sleep, it's so interesting. I oftentimes, like, I'll change the questions up really just because I don't want to ask the same ones all the time. But I do love some of the questions. And one of the questions I ask a lot is how long someone or how much they sleep. And, because I find that to be very, very important. I'm one of those people that I had the sleep doctor on. I interviewed him, and it was fascinating to me. But I wake up every morning and I count literally how many hours I slept.
Oh, do you?
Yeah, I don't know why I do that. But it's comforting to me when I know that I got 8 hours of sleep, because I know I'm going to have a good day. If I get less than 7, I will have to make that up. When I talk to so many people, a lot of people have trouble sleeping.
Yeah.
And so it's fascinating to me how we need so much sleep, but it is so sometimes elusive.
Yeah, sleep is my expertise, and it's kind of my passion because I was one of those people who had really, really severe sleep problems throughout my life. I mean, I remember being a really young child and waking up in the middle of the night and having trouble going back to sleep, or lying awake in bed and feeling tired but not being able to sleep. My mind just really wouldn't shut down. I think a lot of people feel that,
Right.
And particularly as we get busier and we have more demands on us and devices and these kinds of things. And it was really a struggle. I mean, I just kept getting worse, and I had a lot of chronic illness. And then when I was 25, 26, I discovered hypnosis while I was in graduate school, and that completely changed my sleep, changed my life. And as I became focused on working with patients, teaching them self-hypnosis for sleep. So this is something that I'm really passionate about.
Wow. Okay. So let's talk about that. Let's talk about hypnosis, because that was one of the things I noticed on your website when I was researching that you're pretty passionate about that as well. So
yes.
Can we talk, like, what is it? And can we kind of dispel, because I know a lot of people think, I grew up where it's like, oh, don't even think about that because it was something that was so foreign and scary. Can we talk about it in a way that it makes it less that for people?
Yes, absolutely. I'm so happy to do that. I think a lot of people have a really kind of a skewed view of what hypnosis is and how it can be used because of seeing stage hypnotists, like for entertainment or movies, or, the media will portray it in ways that sometimes have just enough truth to it, but are kind of skewed just enough, for their own purposes, to tell a story, to entertain.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's a shame because it's really not this kind of like woo-woo thing. I'll just tell you what my kind of experience was starting out when I was in graduate school. So I had really severe health issues, chronic infections. I've had fibromyalgia my whole life, so I had chronic pain. I had really, really terrible sleep. And I could not get to the other side of it. And then when I was in grad school, I had this professor who was an expert in hypnosis, and I asked him to teach me hypnosis. And I didn't realize at the time that it's a measurable thing. So like in science and in research, when people can measure something and it's stable, they can do a test,
okay,
and look at it, and that test is an accurate test, meaning it goes in like a bell curve. Some people probably have heard of that.
yeah.
Meaning that there's a certain percentage of the population who's going to be right at the middle, and then there's a certain percentage that's going to be, have more of that experience or less of that experience. But
When it
but
comes
it's
to hypnosis.
anything that we want to measure.
Okay, gotcha.
In research, yeah, and that is true of hypnosis, which you wouldn't think. You wouldn't think, like, there's two main scales that are used actually to measure hypnotizability: the Stanford scale and the Harvard scale. And you can do them to, like, the Harvard scale to a room full of people. And what's amazing about it, Heidi, is like I could hypnotize you today.
Yeah.
And you would have objectively the same, or virtually the same experience now as in 25 years from now. So in other words, I could tell you under hypnosis, for example, that, your arm was floating up into the air. And I know it sounds crazy, but it would float up into the air in all likelihood. And then 25 years from now, you'd have that same experience. You might feel differently about it, but it would be, for a viewer watching you, if your arm floated up today, it would float up in 25 years. That it's stable.
So what you're saying is that, like, that's like a genetic thing. Your brain, the way it works is, it's, you either can be hypnotized or you can't be hypnotized. Is that?
Well, that's kind of what is implied by these tests. I mean, that's exactly what is implied by these tests. And so when I learned hypnosis, and my professor did the Harvard scale to me, and I had an experience, and I was like, wow, I feel really normal. I feel relaxed. I'm listening to him. It's not like I'm not thinking for myself. But, I had something happen where it was like my arm was levitating.
Okay.
It was like floating up. And I was like, wow, this does not feel at all the same as if I were to just lift my arm up normally. It felt like there was almost like a balloon attached, lifting up my arm, for example. And I was like, wow, this is so strange. And then I thought, how many times in my life have I thought these are the way things are? Because of course, nothing would be making your arm float up, but other than your perception, other than the words that somebody is saying. And that's a really amazing and profound thing to realize, right? Which is that where you put your attention can have a physical impact on you. So
true.
Yeah. And then I was like, wow, this is really empowering. I remember thinking, like, well, if this is true, if this is really can be applied to other things, maybe this could be the thing that changes my health.
Wow.
Because I was like, well, if for example, you can under hypnosis focus your attention on the lightness in your arm, and then you feel normal, but your arm starts floating up. If you focus in a certain way, then why couldn't you focus in a certain way about sleeping better or changing all kinds of health issues? And so since I had a lot of health issues and I knew a lot about my health issues, I worked in a medical practice and I knew a lot about that, and I was getting a PhD in health psychology. I was like, well, I'm going to get trained in hypnosis. And I started doing self-hypnosis the next day, and it changed everything. I mean, absolutely changed everything. My infections dramatically decreased. My allergies dramatically decreased. My blood tests were different. My pain was different. My sleep was different. And so that was what set me on this journey.
Let me ask you something along that note, just for ease of people listening so that they can kind of get it. I was listening to or reading somewhere, and it talked about how when you say your thoughts have an actual effect on your physical body. So like, for example, if you think about food, you might salivate.
Yeah.
If you think, so that's the kind of thing where, or if you get even near
if you've had a reaction to a food, maybe you had food poisoning, if you smell that food, or you actually will start sweating. So it's that, to me, is kind of along the same lines of what you're talking about. Your thoughts and the way you are feeling actually have a physical reaction in your body. And you're saying that that is the same thing that can happen during hypnosis. Is that kind of similar?
Yeah, it's really similar. And one thing I know, you do a lot to support people on the show with living their best lives and being really successful and meeting their goals, and also alleviating anxiety or stress from their lives. And there's this really interesting piece of information that you and the listeners, I think, will also find interesting, which is that when they've done a lot of brain studies, now they've done for decades now, brain studies on what happens during hypnosis.
Okay.
Nobody quite knows why, but there's actually changes in the brain. Well, there is an area of the brain that when people have pretty severe anxiety, and particularly obsessive compulsive thoughts, which is a form of anxiety.
Right.
It's a rigid form of anxiety, right? People feel like they have to do a certain thing in a certain way in order to stay safe, or it's like a compulsion or an obsession. So there's a certain part of the brain that gets activated when people are engaged in obsessive compulsive, ruminative thoughts. And it's a neural pathway that's quite rigid.
Right.
Interestingly, that same area of the brain gets activated during hypnosis, but in the exact opposite way. So instead of becoming rigid, it actually becomes flexible. So that is really compelling, I think, because what it really is saying is that when people utilize hypnosis, they either go to a practitioner and they do hypnosis, or they learn self-hypnosis, so they learn how to put themselves in a hypnotic state. They can actually change their neural pathways and become more flexible. And I think that that's a big part of that transitional state, right, between the unconscious and the conscious. Hypnosis has a unique ability to do this thing that was my dream when I was like 10 years old, right?
Right.
Which was when I teach people self-hypnosis, I really feel like I'm teaching people how to interface the unconscious and conscious in a really empowered way. And you can change the way that you think.
Right, which is so difficult. When you say it's neural paths that are they're rigid, I always like to sort of speak it in layman's terms. Does that mean sort of lazy thinking, like you just automatically go to because for hypnosis, to me, you actually have to be aware and change, and it takes a little time to change the way you're thinking. Whereas if it would be easy just to keep those same thoughts, which is what a lot of people do, is you just keep thinking maybe negative thoughts or beliefs that you've had your entire life, but you want to change them, but you don't know how. So hypnosis would kind of help you do that.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I would say, I think that that's the one thing that I would probably change in that is, I think instead of it being lazy thoughts, I would say it's they're entrenched thoughts, and they're actually entrenched in the brain. And, I think there's nothing harder than to be doing something that's causing you suffering, and to desperately try everything you can think of to change it, and to not be able to change it. It's exhausting. I mean, and if you look at a lot of people who put in a lot of effort to, people don't want to suffer, even with the negative thoughts, right? They don't want to beat themselves up. They don't want to tell themselves that they've failed. And they engage in that because they can't figure out, no matter how hard they try, how to be successful at that thing, how to overcome that obstacle. A lot of times that obstacle is entrenched because at one time in their lives, it was a good survival strategy. It was a brilliant survival strategy. I mean, it got them to where they are, but they outgrew it. And there's a part of them that feels like, hey, this was a good survival strategy. I needed to do this.
I love that. I love that. I love that you changed it from lazy seems a little bit harsh and, kind of judgmental, but entrenched means it's there. Like you said, sometimes as children, we have to do things because they're mechanisms of survival, which I think we all have that, right? We all have things from our childhood that we have brought to our adulthood. And yes, we've outgrown them. So then how have you helped people through, give us an example of how you've helped someone through hypnosis where you've changed you've changed your own life.
Yeah. I'll stick to sleep because it's one of my favorite things to work with.
Yeah, I love that.
So, the thing is I actually created online sets that people can download if they're interested, where they can actually learn self-hypnosis. It actually has videos that teach them, and has 2 videos, and it has an ebook, and it has 7 audios. And that way people can really learn about hypnosis and learn why it's so particularly helpful for conditions like sleep and all kinds of anxiety, things like that. And
I love that. I'm going to put that in the show notes too. So let's be sure to make sure that we get that in there. I'll make sure to put that.
Oh yeah. Yeah. Actually, there's just as a heads up to the listeners, there's actually a free video and ebook that people can download just by, going to my website, and we can put that in the show notes too. And if they do that, they actually can get a third off the self-hypnosis sets.
Nice.
And the sets are actually I have actually a money back guarantee on them. So that I think people are interested.
No,
by all means, try it out. Yeah. I mean, just because to me, it's really about empowering people. I really want people to feel like they can make it their own. And, for example, there's a lot of apps out there that are for relaxation and for calm and for sleep. And part of the reason I created this set, is that I have felt often frustrated that I think when you want to treat a particular symptom, you need to understand what the structure of that symptom is. So by that I mean, sleep happens in a very specific way. The transition between being awake and being asleep happens in a very specific way in the brain and in the body. So people often will kind of use that time lying awake and having insomnia to get those negative thoughts going, right? That is the time where those negative thoughts.
Perfect timing, right when you're going to bed and going to sleep.
Yeah. And well, one of the things I'm convinced about is that it's really not sleep that is the problem. It's that we're not resting in our lives. We're not finding pockets where we can just be.
Okay.
And really, insomnia and a lot of sleeping issues are issues of transition. How do you get from being awake to being asleep?
Okay.
And then when people wake up in the morning and they want to hit the snooze button, they're fatigued during the day, or they're taking an extra cup of coffee or an extra energy drink or an extra, hit of sugar. Really what they're looking for is something to get them from that sleepy, fatigued state to a state of being alert and awake. So really we have an issue here, which is, being tired, being fatigued is a symptom.
Right.
Having insomnia is a symptom.
Okay. Yes.
And really what we need, I think, is to rest in a very deep way. So again, this is why in 25 plus years, I've been doing self-hypnosis every day, because I think when people figure out a way to resource themselves and gain some mastery of that in-between state, which is tapping into the conscious mind and the unconscious mind, which self-hypnosis does. There's some forms of meditation that kind of do it, but I don't think they have the same applicability to daily life as hypnosis does. So hypnosis is my favorite. But when they do that, when they find a way to rest, I mean, you're really gaining mastery of your life force energy.
So you're saying rest during the day
I'm
to
saying,
sleep well at night?
yeah, yes.
Okay.
I'm saying find ways, take time, find ways to rest. There are certain times of day that are particularly beneficial to do that. I'm saying like take even just, if the listeners just even today, take the time in their daily lives. They don't have to even take a full minute to do this, but just when you're in your daily life, take a moment to look up from your computer, look up from your phone, look around, see your environment. Like just let yourself rest in the space. Just be periodically. Notice the space in between an inhale and an exhale, and an exhale and an inhale. That's a really special space.
It's so interesting to me because when you say that, I think we do that. We don't do that really. We're just kind of going through our day so much that,
Yeah.
and I read this on your website where you were talking about taking the time to just notice things around you, and so often we don't do that. And
Yeah.
and thinking about doing that actually is interesting and calming. So I get it. I like that.
Yeah. I mean, I feel like so much of what I've heard on your show is you're really highlighting, in a way, you're not quite framing it in this way, but I feel like it is what you're doing. It's part of why I was so excited to be on the show, is that you talk to people in a way that really kind of, it focuses on how people are successful. And I think that a lot of the times the way people are successful, and this is what I've heard on your show, is they let themselves rest in the places where they're passionate, where they feel alive.
Yes.
And
Yes.
so if we just take a little bit of time to do that throughout the day, and it doesn't have to be another thing to put on your to-do list. I mean, the last thing anybody needs is another thing to squeeze into our busy lives. So it's really about creating more space. And again, I think it's about sort of living our lives in a way that's sort of higher quality and that utilizes our time better so that we can be more productive when we're doing.
So be a little more maybe intentional about your day, maybe, and then take periodic rest. And how does that affect our sleep at night? Like if we do that, let's say we accomplish a few moments during the day where we do look around and take in what's present and what's immediate, how will that affect our sleep at night? How does that help our sleep?
That's such a great question. I'm so glad you're asking that, because I think it really unpacks this concept. And the way that I think that happens is, if you think of it, I sometimes like to explain it to people in terms of something like blood pressure. Okay, so like, you start out, you have a normal level, your blood pressure's at a normal level. And then let's say you're doing things that are super, super stressful and you're running all the time, busy, busy, busy. And then maybe the blood pressure is going to go up, right? That's what it does. It's reacting and it's going to go up. And then you get into bed and it goes back down. Things are normal and like, oh, got everything done. Goes back down to normal. But let's say the next day, you have a whole bunch of stressful things and your blood's pumping and you're rushing through your day. And again, you're elevating your blood pressure.
Right.
And then you get back and, end of the day, it goes back down to normal. That's what it's designed to do. Right. But if we keep being under pressure all the time and we keep having stress at a certain level all the time, and we don't really rest for long periods of time, and we override our body when it's tired, and we're like, well, I've just got stuff I've got to do, and this stuff is high pressure, and this stuff is really important, and our body's like, oh, I feel so tired. It's like, 3 p.m. I really want that latte,
right? Right, yeah.
And it's sweeter than extra sweet.
Yeah. Give me sugar. I'm going to need that instant spike.
Yeah, then we're overriding our body, and eventually that blood pressure that baseline is no longer going to go back down to normal. It's going to start to elevate.
Okay. Because
we keep pushing it up and pushing it up and pushing it up. And eventually you now have a new baseline.
Wow.
So, right. So if during, it's the same with sleep.
Okay.
Keep pushing it. And, when we're tired and it's not just, oh, go sit and swipe on your phone for 20 minutes. It's a different, that does give you a little break, but it's not really giving you a break internally in the same way. It's not, I mean, one of the reasons that, again, and I, obviously hypnosis is like my favorite thing, but it's my favorite thing because it changed my life, and because I've worked with either psychological or medical patients for, so many decades now, and I've seen such amazing things. And it's so quick. If you can understand how to rest properly, if you can understand how to straddle that conscious and unconscious, those states.
That is fascinating to me. I want to stop you real quick, and then I want to get back to that. Let's get back to that thought. But you said something which I think is a huge, huge issue. And for me too, is we think we're resting. In fact, I had this conversation with a friend of mine last night. We talked about how sometimes if I get anxious or she gets anxious, we will rest or distract ourselves by aimlessly looking at pictures on Instagram, or reading through something on Instagram, or just looking at even anything on the internet.
Yeah.
But we're not resting, is what you're saying. That is just distraction. It's actually probably keeping our blood pressure high, because more than likely it's something that isn't ease.
Well, when a lot of times, I mean, every hypnosis I've ever done, and I've done thousands of them with people and created thousands of self-hypnosis audios for people, and every one is a little different. I never really do the same thing twice, but there are certain things that I would say are signature things for me that I go back to again and again. And this is true of the online recordings too, particularly for sleep. I often think about the way that there is a pattern, a rhythm of things that go out and come back in. So for example, when we exhale, during the time we're exhaling, there's a movement of that breath going from inside to outside in the world. And then before we take in another breath, we pause outside of ourselves for just a split second. I mean, sometimes you can do yogic breathing, and people practice this and they take a little longer. They do a count where they breathe all the way out, and then they do a count and they pause and they wait, and then they breathe in and they do another count. There's box breathing and things like that some of the listeners may be familiar with. Mm-hmm. But when we do this, in my mind, when you breathe out into the world and you pause, even for a split second, this happens every single breath, you are literally checking in the outside world. And when you breathe in again, there's another split second pause inside of yourself. See, I could see that you just
I'm practicing that as we're speaking.
But it happens.
I'm like, okay, how did that feel? How did checking outside of the world feel? Yeah, no, I like it. I like it.
But then when you pause, when you have this, and this happens every single breath, the breath stops. You're breathing in, you're just in that movement. You're present in that movement. It's what the body's doing. It's what's designed to do. And you stop for a split second. And in that split second, before you breathe out again and make this miraculous choice, it's a miraculous choice. How do we know? How do we know when we've taken in exactly enough breath? How do we know how much breath to put out into the world? We know in a deep way. And when you pause inside of yourself for that split second, you're checking in with yourself. You're touching into your center. So the same happens, by the way, with the waves of the ocean. The tide goes all the way out. It pauses, it goes all the way back in, and it touches into the body of the ocean. I use these kinds of images oftentimes like I said, in the recordings for sleep. Why? Because sleep moves in waves. We have REM, which is, rapid eye movement, to non-rapid eye movement. It's the same pattern. If you really look at and think about this, these kinds of patterns happen all the time in nature. They happen in our bodies. They happen the way that day goes to night and night goes to day and back again. And so if we just take a little bit of time to be aware of those spaces in between, it's not just about the doing, it's about that touching in, connecting out into the world. And so I think when we do something like swiping on our phones, there's nothing wrong with that. It's wonderful, it's great, and certain circumstances. But to my mind, we're touching the outside world. We're not really touching the inside world. And so again, I think that there are forms of meditation, most forms of meditation maybe, that allow you to be in that internal state. But the difference, I think, between that and hypnosis is that hypnosis allows for a different kind of flexibility, because you're touching into that internal state, but then you're also moving out with the words, with the imagery, with some of those things. So you're kind of actually straddling both ways of being.
So has technology then affected our sleep? Like, is it getting worse? Because you talk about the patterns of life, and as you were saying that, I'm like, oh my goodness, I really have never thought about that, where we do have patterns of life. There is patterns in our brains, like they like pattern.
Yeah.
You know, they like consistency and pattern. And so are we disrupting our sleep more than we know it, even with technology then? Is that something that is happening?
Yeah, it is. I mean, I think there's been actually a lot of research on the blue light that's emitted from the devices. And I think, look, it has its place. I mean, I'm on social media, but
we
I'm
and it's the way life has been going. But how do we, like what you were saying, and I was thinking about your hypnosis as opposed to meditation, and you say it's very different, very similar idea, but it's different. And you also have said that hypnosis, we all probably do it every day and we don't realize it. So I thought that was really interesting, where if you are driving and you are deep in thought and then you realize, oh my goodness, how did I get from point A to point B? I don't even remember driving. That's sort of a hypnosis state, right?
100%. Yeah. Years ago, when I was asked to be the vice president of programs for the Southern California Society for Clinical Hypnosis. And I was asked to teach some classes on hypnotic phenomenon. And I was like, oh, okay, I'm not sure what you guys mean. Like, what do you want me to teach? And they were like,
what are you looking for here?
And they were like, oh, you know. And I was like, I hope I know what you want me to teach. And they were like, oh, you know. And I was like, well, okay. Oh, so I just taught what made sense to me. And later they were like, wow, that was interesting. We've never seen it taught like that. I was like, but later when I was like, okay, well, maybe now you guys can tell me what you want me to teach and I'll teach that. But actually I was like, well, actually I'm teaching both. I'm teaching all of it. I'm teaching it your way and my way at the same time. But what I was teaching was what I think are the hypnotic phenomenon, what I know are the hypnotic phenomenon that I look for, or that I talk to people about. Like when I'm working with someone and they say, what is hypnosis? I can say, yes, it's a way of focusing attention in certain ways that allow peripheral awareness, like background awareness, to kind of fade. And then you get almost hyper-focused. So can everybody be hypnotized? I would say the vast majority of people can be hypnotized. I think it's a matter of figuring out the way that people naturally experience hypnotic phenomenon and working with that. I think that's the job of the hypnotherapist.
Right.
And like I was saying, in teaching people self-hypnosis at home, online, that was a challenge for me. Well, how can I teach people who are just people in the public who don't know anything about this? How can I teach them that? And I thought, well, the way people are intelligent, explain it to them in a way that makes sense to them. That's why I have the videos and the ebooks. And then give them a sort of different recordings, because different people have different preferences and they're going to want different lengths, and they're going to want different imagery, and there's going to be different issues they want to address. And sometimes people want to listen to the same one all the time or learn the same one all the time. And sometimes people want something different. But really, I have to work with what's naturally occurring in sleep and utilize that. And it's the same with hypnosis. So that's all a long way of saying that what is hypnotic phenomenon? Well, when we focus on something really deeply, like, we're lost in our thoughts and we're driving on the freeway, and suddenly, we're home and we don't even remember making those turns because we were moving automatically. That's a hypnotic state. Why? Because it's automasticity. Things happen automatically when you're hyper focused.
Right.
You go into this kind of automatic pilot state. That's a hypnotic state. When we become really absorbed in something, you can be so absorbed in a conversation with somebody in a restaurant that you don't even notice the background sounds and other people's conversations. You might have noticed it was a noisy place when you first went into the restaurant, then you stop noticing that because you're so absorbed in the conversation.
Yes.
And time seems to just pass in, like, an hour can be a minute, or sometimes.
I just love those conversations.
Amazing.
So are you saying that is a restful state? I mean, is that if you have a deep conversation with a friend where everything else fades in the background, is that restful enough? Is that
I mean, it certainly is beneficial. I mean, that does a lot of different things, having that kind of conversation with a friend, because you're really connecting. There's a real sense of that safety in that. And you feel, I mean, we all feel better when we do that, right? When we have this,
absolutely.
and it's not the same as just like having a logistical conversation about where you're going to meet. And
right.
When you go into those states where you're really focused and you have that connection, it's just such a wonderful thing.
Yeah, think about that for a second. And, I think about the friends that I have that with, or the times that I've had that you feel so good and you don't really know why, but you do feel really good. And it is because you're connected and you have, you've almost been in a hypnotic state where everything else fades away. That's really interesting to me.
Yeah. And I think what I really want to impart to the listeners is just that it's a natural thing. It's not this out there thing that's unattainable to you.
Right.
Almost
That's what
everybody.
I'm hearing.
Yeah. Almost everybody has this experience. Some people have it connecting with a friend. Some people have it, watching a sporting event or doing, exercising. These things happen. Yeah. And it's just a matter, I think, of finding little pockets that are restful, where you can be and connect with yourself. So even if some of the listeners are like, well, I'm not going to take the time to sit down, but I'm going to start, maybe I'll think about this. Well, when you're working out, if you're really super active and you're working out, really take a little bit of time to notice the pleasant sensations of that. I mean, that actually starts to bring in some somatic piece, right? Or body piece, where you start to really focus on that. But just if people can just observe these movements of the breath. And some people, by the way, who have anxiety, like a lot of times when people have anxiety and I'm teaching them self-hypnosis for anxiety, I actually don't focus on the breath per se. So actually, even in the sleep sets, I don't focus so much on the breath, because I find that some people, when they practice breathing, if they tend to be anxious, they actually get a little bit more anxious. Some people find it really relaxing and some people don't. Yeah. I don't like to focus too much on the breath. I find that when I focus on it, it actually speeds up. So what I focus on then, this is my little trick to focus on the breath without focusing on the breath, is I might focus on the inhale and the exhale.
Okay.
I find that that's a little bit more of a body awareness, and it gets people out of their heads. So like people can put a hand on their belly, for example, and just notice the movement of the belly or notice the movement of the hand. And that's a way to kind of start to connect with what we're talking about without getting so like, oh my gosh, my breathing is so fast. Oh, my breathing is shallow. I think sometimes that can kind of agitate people.
I have actually sat to do meditation before, and my brain is very active, and I know I need to meditate, and I try so hard to not have any thought at all that it actually, it gives me a lot of anxiety.
Yeah.
Not often, but every once in a while when I really have a lot going on and I try to just, I know I need to relax, it gives me a lot of anxiety. So yeah, I can see that. That's a good
Well, I
point.
want to tell you something that I think is gonna vindicate you.
Yay. Okay. Let's
Okay.
do it.
Okay. So it has been said in by some of the Zen masters, meditators, that if you can clear your mind for 12 seconds, if a person can clear their mind for 12 seconds without an interrupting thought, they are enlightened. It is that difficult to do. There are people who spend their entire lives meditating, practicing these techniques, and it's that hard to do. The monkey mind is super busy. I'm not saying don't practice meditation, but what I'm saying to you is if you go to meditate and try to quiet your mind and you can't quiet your mind, welcome to the club.
Yes, I know, because everybody's like, oh my gosh, I tried it, a few times and I can't do it. So that's so interesting. 12 seconds. Wow.
12 seconds. Yeah, I've meditated, or I actually learned transcendental meditation when I was like 5. I mean, I was exposed to this stuff in meditation very early. And yeah, and I don't know, maybe 5 years ago, I did a year-long course on concentration. We would have different things that we were supposed to concentrate on. It was sometimes sounds or visual things, or sensation or something like that. And we were supposed to practice concentration. Every day I did these meditations. And then we were supposed to, we had little beads, and we were supposed to count how many times there was an interruption of the monkey mind, like even a little interruption, a little thought. And it was really eye-opening. And this is actually where I read this thing that said, like, just do the practice. You don't have to worry about those interruptions. That's just part of it. And sometimes when you start to concentrate on trying to meditate, those thoughts become even more busy. Yeah. And it's like, you just find the way to sort of focus on these things that are a peaceful state and let yourself be. It's really, you're doing it for yourself. You're really doing it to be able to be present with yourself.
Well, I'm excited about your, the self-hypnosis, because I know there's one part of your, I don't know, your practice where you say, and I love this phrase, where you say, right now, if someone was to say to themselves, right now, I am exactly where I need to be, doing exactly what I need to be doing. And that statement is so releasing and so relaxing to me. I actually write it in my journal every single day, is that I'm grateful to know that I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be, and everything is always working out for me, because that statement is so true. But it also releases me from all of my tendencies to be, because I'm kind of ambitious. I'm like, I should be doing this, or I should be doing that. I should have done this. And it just takes all of that away and just makes it where I'm like, okay, everything I'm doing right now is what I'm supposed to be doing, and things will happen as they are supposed to. I love that phrase that you said.
Oh, I'm so glad. Yeah, I use that really commonly in hypnotic inductions, actually. I have to give you the sleep set so that you can try it out. But I say, I say that in most of the hypnotic inductions that I do, or that I teach people to do. And what I usually say is, at this time, there's nothing to accomplish. And in this moment, nothing to prove, nothing to worry about, and nothing to fear. For now, you are exactly where you need to be, doing exactly what you need to do. And you're free just to be. And there is something about that. That was actually a phrase from my professor, Ian Wickramasacre, who is the person who trained me in hypnosis. And he used to say that, and I loved it. And so that's like my little homage to him.
I love it too. I mean, I've when I found that, I was like, okay, this interview was supposed to be, because that's one of my favorite statements.
Yeah.
It's just, I don't know, it's so comforting. And if people really just sit down and think about that, it's true, because when we the statement that when you are present, you're happy. When you're anxious,
Hmm.
worrying about the future, you're thinking about
Right.
the future or living in the future. And when you're depressed or sad, you're living in the past. So
Yeah.
that's just, I think about that a lot, to where, what am I thinking about that is maybe making me anxious? And it's like, well, okay, I'm supposed to be doing this and I'm not, but if I just live
Right.
present, then that's exactly where I'm supposed to be, which I love that. And I can't wait
Yeah.
to check out I haven't done that yet, but I cannot wait to check out your video. I'm going to go do that as soon as we're done here.
Yeah.
Okay, so those that are struggling with anxiety, because I know you do a lot with people that about anxiety, what would be one thing they could do, like, immediately, that could ease that? Something that they could do today.
Well, I have two thoughts on that. First of all, of course, I'm going to say
Yes,
self-hypnosis.
absolutely.
Self-hypnosis, because I really think that is so empowering. I think it sort of spills over into other areas of life. And I actually think that anxiety is like a really unpleasant hypnotic state. It has some of the same characteristics
Okay.
as some of the really beautiful ways I was speaking about hypnosis earlier, right? It's becoming really absorbed in a sensation or a thought pattern, and everything else seems to fade away, and it feels involuntary, and it feels like it's happening automatically. It's like it's feeling out of control of that. So when we gain mastery of that by learning things like self-hypnosis, which is, again, it's pretty easy to learn, then I think that can help people to gain mastery of that. So that's one thing. Also, I on Instagram and YouTube, I do every week I do a Tuesday sleep tip, which is like a 1 to 4 minute video with little sleep tips and things that people can do. I've been doing this series recently where I've been talking about anxiety and sleep and spinning thoughts and how to stop spinning thoughts. If people go to my IGTV or go to my YouTube, they'll see there's a whole series of, it's called like How to Stop Spinning Thoughts.
I can't wait to go to that. I
Yeah.
realize you had that. I'll look at that. So
Yeah, well, the key of what I was saying in these videos, and I give a bunch of different ways to apply it, is that when people have anxiety, that energy is up in the head. The breathing gets more shallow.
yes.
The mind starts spinning. Our muscles start tensing. So it occurred to me a long time ago that if you start to move the energy in the body and the focus in the body down,
Okay.
to the extremities, or particularly like to the feet, to the belly, to the feet, it starts to bring some of that heat and activation in the mind and in the chest down. And so I would say to people two things. One, really look into and consider learning self-hypnosis, because it's something that you can do regularly and then apply in your life. And it will, I think, overall bring your anxiety down. I really think so. It's what I've seen, and I think it's really valuable, and it's great to have something that you can do on your own. But also keep in mind that bringing your energy down physically in your body, focusing on your feet, focusing on your legs, rub your legs, feel your feet, move your feet, notice the left foot and the right foot, focus on your belly, do some of the things we were talking about before, where as you inhale, put the hand on the belly and notice that the hand moving. Notice that little pause inside in the belly. And then just as you release and exhale, you're releasing some of the tension and then taking in what you need again. It's a new breath. It's a new moment. So I hope that that's sort of a helpful little.
No, it does. I think what you're saying is get out of your own head,
Yeah.
Get that energy out of your head into
Yeah.
your body. And, there's lots of different ways to do that. I have not tried self-hypnosis, but I will. And as soon as I do, I'll let people know and let you know how that works. But I do feel like what you're saying is get that energy. And I love that. Like, you could do that through a walk in nature. Right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
For sure.
And then there's another, I was listening to a podcast and they were talking about short breaths in and one deep breath out. So that again is just focusing on the breath and getting that energy into the rest of your body too, and that helps with anxiety as well. So that's I think what you're saying is fabulous, and so many people have so much anxiety that they are dealing with, and I think some of that comes from not getting sleep, which you love to talk about too.
For
And you
sure.
say that there are three major reasons people don't get enough sleep, right? Is it?
Yes. I mean, well, I think that there are a lot of different reasons, but I think that as far as some of the things that people do that cause problems with sleep, and like drinking caffeine or sugar really late in the day, or hitting the snooze button, and there's some other things. I actually go over a bunch of those in that free ebook and video that I was talking about, and so I'd really suggest to the listeners that they download that, because it's a complimentary thing. Yeah, it really talks about some of those things, and it also really talks about some of the best times of day to rest and how you can kind of get the most out of it, how you don't really have to take a lot of time, and talks a little bit about self-hypnosis, and it talks a little bit more about these things that we've been talking about, but in more depth, and then people can take their time to, and I tried to make it like a really beautiful ebook too, so it's super
I love
easy.
that. Well, I'm gonna go. I'll absolutely go, and we will put it in the show notes so everybody will have an easy link to it.
Great, yay.
So we'll take a look at that. Now, so then, and we won't go forever because I always say this, but I feel like I get so intrigued with talking to. I'm so interested. I could talk to you for all day, but
I know, so fun.
The Europeans take naps in the afternoon, and to me, I wonder. We think backwards about it. We're like, if we go, and we just are so dead tired at night, then we will sleep well. But what you're saying and what I'm hearing, and even, Dr. Bruce, a sleep doctor that I interviewed, he said, if you're so tired that you go to sleep within a minute or like whatever, you're too tired. You haven't rested. So I think you're saying the exact same thing, is rest, and then you'll sleep better.
Exactly.
That's incredible to me.
Yeah, in a way, it's so obvious.
Yeah, it is. It is really.
Wait, is it really? I mean, I'm not trying to simplify it and say to people who are struggling, like, oh, it's just that simple, because it's not always so simple to rest. But I will say, for me, I had at my worst, so when I was 26 and I started doing self-hypnosis, or 25, I had 4 to 7 hours every single night of insomnia.
Wow.
4 to 7 hours. And I woke up every 45 minutes to an hour, and then had trouble going back to sleep. And I woke up completely fatigued, was exhausted all the time. I was working part-time, and I was in graduate school full-time. And I had all kinds of health issues, chronic pain, chronic infections, like severe. It was, I had digestive issues. I had all kinds of health issues. And I tried all kinds of meditation. I was trying to do yoga to the degree that I could tolerate it, but I couldn't kind of get to the other side of it. And so I think that understanding the concept of that it's a particular type of quality of rest.
Yes. Okay.
That allows us then to sleep better. But I remember thinking, like, well, my body knows something. I have tried everything I can think of. I have asked the best possible people. I have the best doctors. I come from a family of doctors.
Right.
And I was like, I am still not getting well. Something's getting better. Something else gets worse. So my head is not going to solve this. My body wants to survive. That's what a living organism is designed to do. It's to survive. So if it's creating a problem, then maybe I need to listen to what my body is telling me. Maybe I need to attune to it, because trying to tell it what to do isn't really working out that well for me.
Right. It knows.
So it knows. And if I'm tired and I'm not able to sleep, I'm tired, but I need to rest.
Yes.
If I'm tired all the time, my system is telling me I need to rest. And so for me, that's the reason why, for since 1996, every single day, I do my self-hypnosis. Every single day, I prioritize that, whether it's for 5-7 minutes or whether it's for 45 minutes, and it varies from day to day. I prioritize that because I know that in order to function and be a happy person and recover when I do have challenges, everybody has challenges, everybody gets sick sometimes, but in order to really recover in the best way, I need to honor that. I need to say to my body, like, every day, okay, you're the boss.
I love that.
Yeah.
So you've seen that change, like in your fibromyalgia, all of that, like your sleep.
Oh yeah. I mean, that actually happened really quickly for me. I went from having, very severe bronchial and sinus infections that would become pneumonia if I wasn't on antibiotics, 10 months of the year.
Wow.
I mean, it was like a decade where I was getting worse and worse and worse. And then I started doing self-hypnosis. I went from being on antibiotics for 10 months of the year to 21 days the year following hypnosis. That was the least it had been in a decade. And the fibromyalgia, I mean, I couldn't walk more than 2 blocks to the corner store and back without being down for the count. I mean, it was days before I could do that every few days, like 2 or 3 blocks. I mean, I was not well, but I easily walk miles. I mean, I'm not saying I have no chronic pain at all, but it doesn't, for the most part, doesn't bother me. So, I mean, I think, and I think that this is something that, again, it's really, I hope that this inspires people to feel like there is hope.
I think it does. I'm always trying to just find something, and it's not going to work it's not everybody's even going to be open to it. Not everybody's even going to try it, but if one person does and it changes their life, I love it. And that's all I always try to do, is try to get all the information, because this works. And I believe that your body is designed to be healthy and fix itself. That's why when you get a cut, it heals itself.
Right.
Your body is designed to heal itself. And what you're saying is give it a chance, right?
Yeah, I'm saying listen to it in its language rather than trying to get your body to listen to your language. And that's why
our language comes from what? Like, we are listening to doctors who, I'm not saying anything against doctors, but I'm just saying doctors that will say, well, you need to take this medication or this medication. And I think if in some instances you try to fix it yourself first, I don't know. I think that's probably
the best medicine helps support the body in fixing itself.
That's right. That is exactly right. I love that. Okay. That's beautifully put.
Yeah.
The best medicine helps your body support it to fix itself.
Yeah. Yeah. So I hope that if any of these tips, or ideas help the listeners, I hope that they, they give us comments, or that they, tag me or email me, or, let us know. Cause I love the feedback, and I always actually read those comments, and I love to hear from people how they, if they're doing great.
Well, I tell you what, where do we find you online? Let's get all of that, because I'll put it all in the show notes. Okay. Instagram. What is your Instagram?
So my Instagram, which is also the same as like my Twitter, is just, Dr. Dyan HJ, and so it's DRDYAN HJ. And then YouTube, people can just go find me on YouTube if they want, by my name, Dr. Dyan Haspel Johnson. And if they forget all that, they can just go to my website, where I have all of those icons, those social icons there at the bottom. And I have, once this podcast is live, I'll post this podcast on my website, and I have a blog, I have a newsletter and stuff like that. And that's just drdyan.com. So it's DRDYAN.com. There's tons of resources on that. There's all kinds of stuff about hypnosis. And there's a special page, which is actually kind of one of my favorite pages, called The Truths About Hypnosis, where I actually dispel like 7 myths about hypnosis. And then for the free ebook and video, which I really recommend people get because it's complimentary, is they can get it through my website, or they can go to www.selfhypnosisforhealing.com.
All right. I love that. Okay. That's great. Yeah. Definitely it sounds like something that, if nothing else, everyone should go and take a look at it and see if they're interested in trying it for themselves and at least give it a shot. I'm going
Yeah.
to. So I'm
Yay!
excited to try it. Yes.
Yes.
And I will absolutely let you know how it goes. It has been so much fun, so interesting. I've had probably 10 million questions that are going to come up later. So I'll be hitting you up again, I'm sure.
All right, we'll do it again.
Yeah, that sounds awesome. Well, I hope you go. I hope you have a wonderful day. You're in Austin. I hope the power stays on.
You too.
I hope your 90-pound tortoise, which you told me you have, which is fascinating to me, gets his ranch soon. When do you get your ranch? When?
I think next month. Yeah, we're moving. Okay. I went from being a downtown Chicago girl to an LA girl, and I've lived all over. I've actually lived in London too, and Portland and whatever, but now we're going deep in the country.
I love it. that is really quite interesting to me. So I love that.
We're going to rest.
Yes, rest. Yes, you're finding your peace in Austin, Texas. Great.
Yes.
All right, Dr. Dyan, this has been so much fun, and I'm sure we will connect again.
Yes, it's been a pleasure. Thanks for having me on, Heidi.
Okay.
Okay.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Don't forget to subscribe and share with your friends, because we're just going to keep going bigger and better places together, and I love that about us. Talk to you in a few days.